actually taking two roles here. I'm actually a panelist, and then I agreed to be the moderator also. So you'll see me sort of take a little bit of a shift as I move along. I will warn you that the panelists know that we're to a 7-minute presentation spot when we begin with our presentations, and it'll be followed by a few questions I have, but I really urge you to participate. If I don't have to ask any questions, that would be cool with me, okay? But I do want you to feel free to understand that what we have with this group, and I'll just identify them at this moment. We have Martha Richards, who's the Executive Director of Women Arts. Could you just raise your hand, I guess? And we actually have 3 artists on the panel, myself included, and also Geri Montano, okay, and Melanie Cervantes. And we also have, last but not least, Karen Teegarden, who is the co-founder and CEO of UniteWomen.org, which is a fairly, well, it's been going on for a while, but she's just ready for her nonprofit status. So what'll be interesting, I think, about this group of panelists, these are people that are working individually to make change, make progress, and also within organizations that they have actually generated. So I hope your questions will be a little bit about that if any of you are wondering where you can tap in yourselves into the idea of change. So first I'm going to wear my hat as presenter, and I'm going to start my little timer here. Okay. I'm supposed to set the good example, I believe. Okay. The name of my talk is The Invisible Connectedness of Things, and I was interested that a number of people already, Louise included, had talked about the idea of interconnections or connections about things. And the arts have this really unique opportunity to cross disciplines, to explore social issues, and to express that interconnectedness of subjects. The current challenge for the artist, as I see it, is to invent these overarching kinds of constructs to organize very disparate creative methodologies and relevant subjects for a better world. My work brings together geography, biography, and environment. And I've created artwork in conjunction with a large variety of collaborators, such as the California Bureau of Automotive Repair, who do your smog checks, Santa Monica Bay Restoration Project, California Science Center, art museums, as well as the Lakota Indians of South Dakota. Pearls of Wisdom, which Sandra actually, I want to identify, was the program director. Pearls of Wisdom End the Violence is a continuing project that uses the pearl as a metaphor for the treasure that emerges from the oyster in response to an irritant. I worked in collaboration with A Window Between Worlds, which is an organization that brings projects to women and families who are really trying to move out of domestic violence. And in the case of the Pearls Project, the process required the participants to learn sculptural processes that most of them have never encountered before. The cooperative spirit of the participants, helping each other, of course, when, like, how do you really do that? Through all those sculptural techniques using plaster and rasps and other simple tools from, studio and sculptural studios, became a real source of confidence for each member as they also move forward to share their words of advice with each other and the world at large. The ultimate goal, really, in my point of view, is to develop this handbook for living. I really felt very strongly that the idea wasn't really to see these women and families as victims. I really saw them as these courageous, athletic types, really, who had moved out of through a strong spiritual and physical strength. And rather than trying to always tell people in those situations how they should feel and how their lives should be, I really felt that they would be the ones to be able to share with us words of wisdom. So the ultimate piece was really also not only the pearls exhibited, but also their words within a book and also in an installation. If activist art is to communicate and to locate voice and to play a role in creating a better world, then working with the community really does hold the key. The specificity of audience gives both art and activism its lively spirit, and when art is made within a community and then presented back to that community, its relevance is really paramount. I learned this along the way with a lot of different projects, but I think one of them that was striking to me was I got permission from a principal at Harvard Westlake High School to be able to dumpster dive in their dumpsters at school. And for 5 days in a school, 5-day school week, I collected all their trash out of the dumpster. I took it back to my studio, I washed and I ironed it, and I prepared it, and created artworks that were then re-exhibited at their school gallery. So, for instance, this is a paper person made up one day of their paper trash, and I remember exhibiting it and kids going, "Oh my God, there's my math quiz." We did other things along the way. I work with math and science students as well as art students, and for example, this is the discarded water that I got at the end of the week. It does get recycled, but I had the math and science classes calculate how much water had been thrown away, and 40% of the water had been pitched. When the Science Center in Los Angeles saw that paper person, they said, "Oh, we want one too." And you know, this is really dirty business, like collecting people's trash, but I agreed to do it. And in this case, we had about a year to do it and to prepare for it. So I said to some of my scientist collaborators, "What day should we pick?" And one of them said, "Let's do Earth Day." And it was really perfect because Earth Day is the day that everybody feels like they're all doing their part and playing their role. So this figure is actually made out of one day of their Earth Day 2009 trash, and it's 48 feet long and 48 feet wide, and it's a permanent piece in their ecosystem swing. So I'm sure any of those kids on field trips that day will find their stuff also. I just finished this book, and I brought a few of them if anybody wants to grab one. I have some other cards you can have just for free over there. This one is Here I Am, Estoy Aquí, and it's a 25-page activity book about health that's available for kids and families that go to a free clinic in South Los Angeles called THE Clinic. It's To Help Everyone Clinic. It's a clinic that's been there about 40 years. Very well established. And the idea was that I arranged the book so the kids would work on one side of the book and the adults or teens would work on the other and learn about what the kids were doing, little drawings or with stickers and coloring in and so on. It's really important to me the way this book developed. I interviewed their practitioners and also some of the clients that went to the clinic. And so the content was really written from those interviews that I had used. And again, this idea of taking a project and pulling people in and then giving it back to them is really a very effective way. You know, sometimes I think that it's very difficult to look at the big picture of how activism takes place. It really often has to take on a real grassroots level, and I'm even going closer to grassroots, like going to a space. Okay, well, I just ran out of space there. I think I'd just like to close with another idea that crossed my mind when I was writing the piece, and I hope it will maybe dovetail with some of the other speakers. Art that provides a viewer with these riveting portrayals of nature or society really has the opportunity to re-engage a person with their physical world. And this is where positive change can actually take place. And my feeling is that if a person does not really love their world, they will never imagine the need to protect it. So, thank you. So, the first actually on my list, I want to give a little bio now of everyone. It's Martha Richards, and Martha has served as executive director, as I said, of Women Arts, since its inception in 1995. Prior to Women Arts, Richards served as the executive director of the Brooklyn Center for Performing Arts at Brooklyn College and also managing director of Stage West, a regional theater in Springfield, Massachusetts. Richards has been frequently recognized for her commitment to women in the arts, and in April 2009, she was inducted into Bay Path College 21st Century Women Business Leaders Hall of Fame for her philanthropy. I want to just briefly mention about Women Arts, and I know we passed around some cards for some of you. Women Arts is a nonprofit organization that celebrates, supports, and promotes art by and about women. So some of you may want to tap into what she's got to offer. Their current programs focus on 3 overlapping goals: empowering women artists by sharing helpful information and advice, encouraging collaborations between women and social justice organizations, and raising public awareness of women artists through an annual international celebration.
Thank you. So thanks so much, Kim, and it's such an honor to be here with the WCA on its 40th anniversary. Women Arts is only 17 years old, so we're relative babies. When I started Women Arts in 1995, our mission is two things really: to increase the visibility of women artists and to increase the funding or opportunities for women artists, whether that's in the nonprofit world of getting grants or whatever. So, and when I did that, I immediately started to hit a lot of sort of issues around the framework. When I was trying to get grant money for women artists, you'd either hear, well, you know, we like the arts, but they're a frill, they're not really that important, they're not, what about these women, they're not as good as the men anyway, or they'd already be making more money. You know, so there were a lot of issues, and it was very hard to argue against those within the context that they would be, you know, so like if you're asked, are homeless people more important than women artists, it's a very hard argument to make. But so I started thinking about this issue. You can go to the next slide. Or do I have the clicker?
Oh,
yeah, sorry.
yeah. Just click this one.
Okay. Hey, okay. So I started thinking about the arts world as more of a pyramid, and this is sort of how many people are involved in different kinds of arts organizations and what their different sizes are. Because there was sort of this weird cognitive dissonance or whatever, you know, split between the idea that arts are a frill, but then when we're watching a mainstream movie or a television show, it's like, oh yeah, those people get millions of dollars to do that work, you know. So what's the difference there? So I started thinking about, okay, there's actually a huge number of unpaid amateur artists, people who just love the arts and do it all the time on their own. And you think about now with YouTube, there's something like 490 million YouTube users who are uploading stuff continually. So clearly the arts has some relevance to the bulk of the population. There's independent artists and small nonprofits. So if you want to think about, you know, a lot of groups like Women Arts, we're in that category, under 500 grand. We work real hard, we're understaffed, but we're committed to doing different kinds of community organizing or work with specific communities often. Then there's sort of the regional theaters and the symphonies. In San Francisco, you think of ACT or the San Francisco Symphony. Those have slightly larger budgets, up to like $5 million. In the bigger city, well actually, ACT is bigger than, it's in the next category off. So in a medium-sized city, the regional theater would be Stage West that again in Springfield, Mass. Have a budget of $2 million a year, staff of about 40 people. ACT is more like $12 million. You know, they go up. And in New York City, they're even bigger budgets. So there's those large nonprofits. And then at the very tippy top is the for-profit arts commercial world of television and film, where it's just millions and millions and millions of dollars. But this is sort of representing the number of people involved. And then if you were to do a scale of the money involved, it would be sort of this way. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea of the scope. So Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie, is $300 million budget. Spider-Man, the famous Julie Taymor thing, was $75 million and counting when she left. Prime time episode of television is about $10 million. Then you look at the National Endowment for the Arts budget, which is our federal agency funding all the artists in the country. for the benefit of the citizens. That's got a budget of $154 million in 1980. And this year, it's actually less in actual dollars. It's down to $146 million. So not seeing a whole lot of growth there in the government funding of the arts. But also, it's just like, gosh, that's a humongous gap between 146 and 300 million. So if you look at the women in these different things, we're obviously half of the basic population. Most of the women's groups that I have encountered have budgets under $500,000. There's only about 10 that I can think of that have a budget higher than that, and like the National Museum of Women in Washington, D.C., a couple of large museums. You know, this is a big exercise for you to just think about, do I know any women's organizations for the arts that have a budget over $500,000? It's a hard list to come up with. And then, you know, if you look at the nonprofit sector, there are those three categories that you spend $63 billion, so they're not, you know, a tiny thing. And then at the very top, if you think about the film industry, the television industry, there's studies there's a woman named Martha Lawson who does studies every year. And basically women are writing or directing about 10% of the top Hollywood, the 250 top Hollywood films, big budget Hollywood films. So it's a very tiny percentage. You think Kathy Bigelow won the Oscars for Best Director 2 years ago. That was the first time a woman won. And if you think of it, well, it's no wonder not many women are winning because there's only 10% of the films are directed by them. So Women Arts chooses to work in that sector there. And here's the reasons why. First of all, we feel it's an essential part of the pyramid. It's kind of a research and development lab for the rest of the pyramid. And I imagine a lot of you are working in this same area with us. It's political. There's many more talented sort of feminist people working at that level because it's almost impossible for them to get the money at higher levels. It's more diverse because there's more discrimination as you go up. Just in general, as you would expect with the rest of our society, as the money gets bigger, the women and the diversity gets less. And it's very cost effective to work in this range because a relatively small investment has a big impact on the project. So here's the things that Women Arts decided to do. I'm rushing a little bit because I'm worried about this 7 minutes. Okay, so the strategies. So we're trying still to answer this question of like if you were starting a nonprofit institution dedicated to helping women be more visible and more and get more money, what kinds of strategies would actually work the best? And these are the ones that we've come up with so far. Is first, we want to help women get the resources that they need by providing information. So a lot of you, hopefully you've got these little cards if you didn't see them, but they basically have our web address on them, which is womenarts.org. And if you look there, you'll see hundreds of pages of information about different funding sources that you can find, not as much about visual artists, because our initial focus was on film and video and theater artists, which is my own background is in theater. And we're still a tiny staff of 2 people, so it's, we're limited in what we can do, but if any of you would like to help us build those resources, we'd love to do it and get it out for people, about 10,000 people a year. Wow, already? Okay. Look at our site. So we're trying to build community among women artists. We're trying to increase the visibility. And the main thing that I wanted to talk to you about was Swan Day. So Swan Day stands for Support Women Artists Now Day, and that is actually a holiday that was that we invented. Once again, it's the story of a pizza where my friend, Chicago filmmaker Jan-Lisa Hutner, and I were sitting around having a pizza and said we need an annual international holiday for women artists, and so we invented one and declared it. And luckily, we started with the idea of like Coalition of Women Artists every Cow Day, so it's very fortunate that we came up with Support Women Artists Now Day. So Swan Day is now, basically, it was modeled after Events Thursday Day, where people all over the world do celebrate and do annual performances of the vagina monologues. And the way it works is that Eve gives them the rights to do the play if they agree to donate part of the money to a local nonprofit that's fighting violence against women. So we thought that was a great model because in looking at the funding world, it's a decentralized model. The local women get to make the decision about what they're doing. So we decided, rather than one big group, so we decided it would be okay to just invite women all over the world, women artists all over the world, to create events that would celebrate women artists and hopefully raise money for them. And so we've now had 900 events all over the world in 23 different countries. And if you see me afterwards or during the questions, I'll tell you more about it. Is that good? Yeah.
Next, I want to introduce Geri Montano. She is a contemporary artist of predominantly Native American heritage and studied at San Francisco Art Institute. She creates provocative, evocative collages juxtaposing subversive and aesthetic imagery, never shying away from controversial subjects. Montano has been awarded 2 San Francisco Arts Commission Native American Arts and Cultural Traditions grants, which funds the currently expanding project dealing with human trafficking and sex trafficking of Native American women and girls. Most recently, she's had a solo exhibition called Traded Moons, and she's going to show you some examples of that work at Galleria de la Raza. She is currently part of a traveling art exhibition titled FAX or FAX on view at San Francisco Arts Commission Gallery. She's a visual artist, as I said, who does these provocative pieces, and she's inspired by socio-political feminist themes, working with underrepresented women of her community by giving arts workshops. So I'll hand it over to you. She's going to talk to you about Freedom House.
Do you want me to stand up over there? It's up to you. You want to do it there?
Hi, I'm Geri. I'm new to speaking, so please excuse the delay. Okay, like she said, I'm predominantly Native American. My father's Navajo, my mother is Spanish, French, and Comanche. But I like to emphasize the Native American heritage because we rarely hear about Native Americans in mainstream media or in the art world. So I'm here to represent the Native American component of the arts. And I recently, like Kim said, received a grant from the San Francisco Arts Commission to complete a project I titled Traded Moons. It deals with the sex trafficking of women. I got inspired to do this project first by reading a book by Somali Mom, Road of Lost Innocence. She's a Cambodian author who was actually a victim as a child of sex trafficking. But after reading that book, I started noticing in the news and online stories about sex trafficking happening locally and also in the Native American community. So I researched that further and actually got in contact with the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition and arranged for a speaker to speak at the art exhibition. The Traded Moons project, I'll show you the first image, is I created my own works, but I also wanted a community engagement component, so I offered a workshop at a Bay Area trafficking shelter, which helps women rebuild their lives. And it was labor trafficking and sex trafficking. This is another image. And if you have any, I'll talk a little about the images in a minute. These 3 are my images, and now I'll show you some from the workshop. This is my first time doing a workshop with women. I've worked in battered women's shelters or domestic violence shelters as a volunteer before, but this is my first time trying to incorporate an art project. So I'd go in there. Originally, I wanted to do like an intensive 4-day in a row workshop for like 3 hours, but the house social worker suggested I come in for only 2 hours every Friday, like 4 Fridays in a row, which kind of stretched it out, and I was wondering how we're going to get the artwork done. And I wanted to work with only like 5 women, but after the second time, I realized that it was going to be like a different woman every time because their lives are in such transition. Some of them move out or they're taking college classes. So we only had a couple of hours with, well, I ended up about eight women. But the workshop was more about expressive healing, you know, offering that, teaching them how they can use that to help build their self-esteem and rebuild their lives again. This is this woman, she was new to the program, and she was very vocal about all the violence she experienced. This woman she was more withdrawn, but you can see the expression, the way the mouths are covered up with X's. And this woman, she was very vocal, very active. I worked with her about 3 times. She was actually taking college classes, and she had a part-time job, so it was great to see that she was rebuilding her life and gaining more confidence. There were other women in the house who they just stayed on the sidelines. They didn't want to participate. By the time I finished like the 5th workshop, they were more trusting of me, and they asked me to come back, and they wished that they had participated. So I was happy to see that was helping them, and they were gaining trust. And I'll end with a quote from the Native activist Winona LaDuke. "There is no social change fairy. There is only change made by the hands of individuals." Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm next.
Next we have Karen Teegarden, who is the CEO and founder of UniteWomen.org. It's a nonpartisan educational nonprofit organization created on social media in February 2012. And I mentioned to you before, they're waiting for their nonprofit status right now. UnitedWomen.org also held 55 simultaneous rallies in 45 states in April to shine a spotlight on the influx of anti-women legislation and rhetoric. Since that historic action, Unite Women, I don't know why I want to put that United in there. UniteWomen.org's mission is to change the social and cultural conversation on issues affecting all women. Karen's passion for politics grew while working on the Obama campaign in 2008, and it has not subsided since. She worked on her U.S. Congressman's campaign in 2010 and became involved in his efforts to help small business owners. Karen is president of Karen Teegarden and Associates, a marketing sales company based in Michigan, and she's a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? I have to put these on. So my goal, and thank you so much, Louise, for setting me up, my goodness. And I'm seeing and hearing a lot of threads this morning already. But my goal by the end of this day is that everyone is going to participate on November 6th and get motivated to get as many people involved. And it's not just women's issues that are connected, but I see the connection from everything that everybody is talking about here. Yes. Right. Do I have to point this anywhere or just click this? Oh, forward. Okay. So, and so I see that Sandra is here, and she, while she had not yet been called a slut the day that I started this, I think it happened 5 days after, we joined the crowd, right? But one of the things that did motivate me was the panel that you were not allowed to speak at. But also, we had legislation going around the country, personhood amendments, transvaginal probes. And I picked up the phone. Oh, we had a presidential candidate actually saying that he did not believe that birth control should be legal. So I was on the phone with a friend of mine, Desiree Jordan, in New York, and which I met her on Facebook on the Obama campaign. And so we talked to each other anytime we were really pissed off or really elated about politics. We had a political relationship over social media. So we were talking, and I just said, what in the world? If this is not going to get people out on the streets, what in the world is? What do we have to do? So we hung up. This was very late at night, and I have a 21-year-old daughter that still cannot believe I've done this on social media. Like many of you, I'm sure I'm always calling my daughter saying, now, how do I do this? But I saw on Facebook this thing that you could click on, create a group. This is testament that anybody can do anything. My intention was not to create an organization. I just thought somebody had to do something to get women on the street, to get our voices heard. I went to bed that night, posted it on like-minded walls, got up, and there were almost 500 people in my notifications, if anybody's on Facebook, that wanted to join. I started by looking at all of their profiles to see if they were okay. After about 5 of them, I realized how ridiculous that was. Just started letting everybody in. They private messaged me, PM'd me, and told me who they were, what state they were from, what their skill sets were, and said, what can I do? And many of them had said, I was getting ready to do the same thing, thank God somebody did, let's join forces. So within a week, we had over 12,000 people across the country that had joined us. We created state organizing groups, and we planned, as you mentioned, as Kim mentioned, 55 events across the country in 45 states in 10 weeks. We were very focused. So yes, it was quite an undertaking, and it was all done on social media. It's the first time in history that anything like this has taken place. So I guess, you know what, I'm forgetting to do my slides, I'm sorry. But, you know, we still get this. Is there really a war on women? I just did a radio interview while I was down at the convention, and it was with a conservative. We need to start talking to people outside of our little bubble. If we don't do that, we're not going to convince anybody, but it was I knew it was a conservative radio host, and he introduced me as, you know, someone fighting this supposed war on women. I think that there is a war on women. I don't think that, I know that. So what took place, this is the growth of our organizing group of people who came and said, we want to help. So by the time we held our events on the 28th, we had a little over 22,000 people. Some of them weren't engaged, but they wanted to be part of what we were doing on some level. And, you know, Louise talked about it, that, you know, not everybody has to do what I'm doing, which is truly engrossed my life. I no longer basically have my business. But we really look at this as a layering effect. And there are some people who just, if we can just reach them with the messaging, that's great. If someone just wants to sign petitions, that's great. If someone wants to get on the street, that's great. What does that mean, 2 minutes? Okay. So here is some of the, and I know some of you were at our events, thank you very much. But it's very interesting because we had, across the country, close to 47,000 people show up. Our expectations, I have to say, were much greater just because there was so much anger going on in the country. But I think there are certain types of people who go to rallies, and then others that don't. And so we learned a lot. I've learned a lot in the last 6 months. But the other aspect of this was, where was the media? I mean, we hear where are the women, where was the media? We got permits and insurance for all of our events. So they knew that there was not going to be any sensationalism, there wasn't going to be any violence, it wasn't worth covering. There was foreign press at our events. We had people fly in from other countries to attend our events. We had solidarity events across around the world. I mean, the messaging that we've received for what we're doing around the world is just absolutely amazing. Since our events, our online platform has grown tremendously. With Facebook and Twitter, obviously. We have a YouTube show. We have 6 shows a week, radio, our blog, and Blog Talk Radio, our YouTube channel, sorry, I'm mixing it up, and then Tumblr. We have an amazing college division. So what you can basically see from this next slide is our growth on Facebook. It is just not ending. In fact, we're now approaching 42,000, and we have a reach, by the way, of over 13 million people on Facebook. And we're really working and wanting to combine efforts with a lot of organizations, and we're already doing that. And I would love to talk to some of the people who are most of you are involved in the arts with women, because we have something else that we're going to be starting that I think would be great to work with some of you. You basically read our mission statement, so I will go through that. So what are we doing now? We are compiling all legislation affecting women across the country. Now, that may seem like, well, doesn't that already exist? Not in one place. Right now, we have all of the reproductive rights issues, but we're going to have voting issues, domestic violence issues, and on down the line. September is our register and educate people to vote. October, domestic violence. So those involved with domestic violence, I'd love to talk to you. In their own words, you have got to go to our website, unitewomen.org, and watch the Paul Ryan video we put together. That'll tell you what we're doing with all of these candidates. It's in their own words. You be the judge whether they're pro-women or anti-women. And We Are Good Women is really trying to dispel the myths that just because you've had an experience like an abortion or rape or being a single mom, you are still a good woman. You are not a bad person. So that's really what we've done in 6 months, and we hope that you join us.
Our final panelist is another artist, Melanie Cervantes, and she's a Chicana activist artist whose role is to translate the hopes and dreams of justice movements into images that agitate, I like that word when you said that, and inspire. Melanie's work includes black and white illustrations, paintings, installations, and paper stencils, but she's best known for her prolific production of political screen prints and posters, which you will see today. Employing vibrant colors and hand-drawn illustrations, her work moves those who viewed as the marginal to the center, featuring powerful youth, elders, women, and queer and indigenous peoples. Melanie's training as an artist began actually with her mother and father. She went to UC Berkeley and received formal training in ethics studies, and in 2004 graduated with a bachelor's degree. So, Melanie, can I have you on?
Yeah, I'm going to take this one here. Are you looking? Oh, great.
Hi, I want to just start by thanking the Honoring Women's Conference for inviting me to participate. It's really an honor to be here. I'm actually here representing the Milagro building, which I'm half of. My partners in the room, Jesus Barraza and I, started this project about 5 years ago now. And this is our purpose statement, and the underlying premise of this purpose is that the people most impacted by injustices are the best equipped to articulate the solutions to those problems. And that those movements of people can be supported by art that acts as a reflection of their power and their love. So this is a photo taken in Arizona, and it's an example of us fulfilling our purpose. It's a portrait of a family taken in 2010 at a march in Phoenix where tens of thousands of people took to the streets to protest Arizona's Show Me Your Papers law, SB 1070, which is largely carried out through racial profiling. I'm going to talk about a couple of case studies that just kind of illustrate how we do our work. So Arab revolutions were incredibly inspiring and were really kind of touchstones for me as moments to really respond to things that were happening in the world. And because these things were happening so quickly, I also learned to work quickly and develop pieces that responded to those political flashpoints, such as the Tunisian and Egyptian revolution, what we refer to in the West as the Arab Spring, in a really timely manner. So I started to see work that I was creating reach other parts of the world, I think, at speeds that were previously unimaginable. This is a downloadable PDF. It's a version of a piece that was also made by hand, and I uploaded this poster on January 31st. And on February 1st, the day after, less than 24 hours later, a Thai activist holds a poster in front of their Egyptian embassy in Bangkok. The group, this group were showing their support to the demonstrators in Egypt who took to the streets for 7 days consecutively to overthrow President Mubarak. We also hand-printed, analog, a few hundred posters that we gave out to people in San Francisco, where we're from, the Bay Area, to celebrate Mubarak once he was ousted. And a year later, a Facebook photo emerges that I'm tagged in, and somehow one of these handmade posters made it from San Francisco to the epicenter of the Egyptian struggle for liberation. So this is a picture that was taken on April 6th of the youth movement in Tahrir Square, and they're chanting, "The people want the fall of the field marshal," or the head of the military junta, so the target moved once Mubarak was toppled. And so I think this is really kind of shows that both analog and digital are really important strategies for connecting with folks. And they sent a message saying, "Melanie, Tahrir lives on, the revolution continues." So the 99% and their movement. Some say the Arab Spring inspired the Occupy Wall Street movement and its emergence. And in September of last year, we start to see the beginning of a national movement of the 99%. And I'm really excited to see communities waking up and becoming activated, because for me, it's the first time I see people catching up en masse to community-based organizations that have been led by people of color that have been addressing a lot of these issues already. But I feel like it was like this massive awakening. And so I start to tell and elevate stories through posters about people who had been feeling the impact of capitalism for the past 5 to 500 years. And again, these pieces quickly go viral online. But they're also used traditionally as picket signs at major actions, such as the one depicted here. This was from January of last year, where over 2,000 people participated in Occupy San Francisco's call to foreclose on Wall Street West. Considered to be heart of the financial system on the West Coast, the call was for San Francisco's financial sector to be targeted, and this was done to coincide with the second anniversary of the Supreme Court Citizens United ruling that recognizes corporations as having the full rights of people, human beings. And so these actions sparked a media frenzy on the West Coast. So these were really examples of sparking my imagination and being able to be kind of a conduit for people's stories, people of color stories in particular, and starting to elevate those stories as part of a fabric of a bunch of different narratives of people really trying to change the current conditions that we live in. So this was one done for Occupy Oakland, that was launched during Indigenous Peoples Resistance Day. It's another one done with an organization called Chinese Progressive Association. And this is a piece that was done in collaboration with an anti-racist organization of white folks that wanted to connect with the immigrant rights movement. My last slide it kind of touches on the last kind of piece that we did around kind of this movement of the 99% and talks about kind of how we've continued to experiment and do cross-platform and multimedia formats in order to be able to reach multiple audiences. Oops, I was clicking on my laptop. So this is the CPA poster. This is the solidarity poster. And this is the one I'm talking about. So this May Day image was produced at least 40,000 times in print via newspapers like Indignación, which is the Spanish language newspaper of the Occupy Wall Street movement. It was also printed by OccuPrint, which emerged when Occupy Wall Street Journal asked some artist friends of mine to guest curate an issue that was dedicated to the poster art of the Occupy movement. And so once people on the West Coast saw these things I did for New Yorkers, they were like, we want that too. And so these were also produced as flyers and posters and postcards in English and Spanish for a coalition in San Francisco that was doing May Day events. And so in late April, when I got a call from my mom telling me that she saw people giving the poster out in LA, which I still don't know how they got to LA, on Spanish language news, I knew that the poster reaching her through its own path without any help from me, that I knew that the poster and, you know, this message about multiracial movement, you know, that all of us kind of with these shared fates, was reaching the popular masses. That's it, thank you.
Okay, well, anyway, I just got word because we were running late even when we began. So I really want to thank the panelists for doing such a great job. I must say, as I was going over my questions, everybody sort of answered the question along the way, like, you know, who's your audience? Where do you gather them? What do you expect from your audience once you actually gather them together? What's the big difference between doing it as an organization and doing it as some kind of renegade artist where you're just in a group like running forward, right? And also, how does social media go on? So I really want to thank you all for contributing to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all the speakers on the activism panel. I mean, it's been so moving for me to hear all of the things that individuals who have a passion about something are doing. They do it as an individual person. They do it in starting a movement. They find ways to collaborate with others. I mean, I think this is what today's conference is about. So thank you so much, everybody. And we're going to move right along to the Education and Current Events panel. So will those panelists please come and take your seats?